Hello, good evening, and welcome to Prague Chattery 777. Well, something very exciting arrived in the mail last week. I had a chance to kind of get to know it a little bit. That something was Do Not Disturb by Graaf Generator. The most recent album by the band. It is the third album by the trio. Hot off the presses. It's, I think, like less than 3 weeks old at this point. Released less than a month ago, put it that way. And as such, this is still a first impressions kind of chat. I don't think we're really gonna have a good idea, perfect perspective on this album until like a year or so. That's how it is. Um, I feel that it has to age a little bit. That said, I think this album is gonna age very, very well. Um, Obviously, I'm very excited about it right now, so of course I'm saying this is the best thing the trio has done. And I think it probably is, actually. It's a very different album from their previous album, A Grounding in Numbers. I think this album might be a little bit more nostalgic than Grounding in Numbers. Grounding in Numbers is very forward-looking. It's very, this, I was going to say it's very ambitious, but this is extremely ambitious as well. But I think there's a more forward-looking kind of thing going on with Grounding in Numbers, and there's references to the past, both lyrically and musically, I think, which is a good thing. Obviously, worth noting, Peter Hamill in an interview mentioned that at some point during the recording of the album, one of them mentioned, hey, this might be the last album that we ever do. And of course, as soon as that's said, that's just going to kind of influence the direction that they went. And so I think they may have been subconsciously going for a summing up. Here's a look at everything we've done, and there's parts of this album that remind me of all the areas, all the eras of Graaf. There's stuff that reminds me of Pawn Hearts and H to HE. There's stuff that reminds me of the '70s stuff. And there's a lot of fresh stuff too that picks up on what the trio has done before. And there's also completely fresh, forward-looking stuff on this album as well. Obviously, very notable is Hugh Banton's use of the accordion, which is a brand new ingredient to the sound palette of Graaf. And I think that fills the sound out a little bit. Obviously, the trio is a different thing than the David Jackson stuff, but I mean they're very well established here. I mean, I think the trio found its feet on Grounding in Numbers, certainly, and then the band is totally confident now, and I think this is again like Grounding in Numbers. This is totally on par with the '70s stuff. I'm biased as well because I mean, like I've said, the trio Graaf is kind of my Graaf. I was a fan before the release of Trisector, so I've been able to watch the progression of the band in real time, which is quite a privilege. And like I said, I'm very glad that the band have done that, have reunited and had this late career, which is it's fantastic. One of the criticisms I think the trio tends to get a lot is, it sounds too much like Peter Hamill's solo stuff. It sounds like mid '90s Hamill, or it's always the comparison with Peter Hamill's solo. And what I kind of say to that is, of course there's going to be an influence there. I mean, you have to think Peter Hamill he spent nearly 30 years consecutively honing his skill and his craft, his songwriting craft. And as such, he spent a lot more time in his life and career as a solo artist developing that solo sound than he did working with Graaf. So after that, close to 30-year period where he's doing solo stuff, of course what he's going to bring to the table in Graaf is going to be informed by that 30 years of writing experience. So, and then the second point is, why complain about that? I personally love all the Peter Hamill solo stuff, so if I think that's good and I like Graaf, then it's all good. It sounds good to my ears. I think it's great. But yeah, I mean, of course, Hamill's going to be influenced by what he did, you know, in the late '70s, '80s, '90s, and early 2000s. You know, that's a long time spent as a songwriter, and of course, that's going to be, you know, there's going to be traces of that. But all that said, I think this very much sounds like a Van der Graaf record. I mean, the sound palette is definitely a Van der Graaf. You know, it's the band. It is a band thing. Um, you know, there always has been and always will be a difference between a band recording and a Hamill recording. Particularly now, I mean, the Hamill solo stuff that's been released in the last 10 years or so is very stylistically different from Van der Graaf, and I think Hamill's very conscious of making sure there is you know, a distance between the two. But I'm going to start talking about the album as best I can. Like I said, I've probably listened to it maybe like front to back close to 5 or 6 times, and I've gone back and sampled the songs here and there, like, you know, some of the standout tracks. I think there's a number of standout tracks on it. Like I said, you know, altogether it holds up really well. It's definitely an album of songs. That's worth mentioning too. I think I mentioned in the Grounding in Numbers video, Grounding in Numbers, you know, because the songs are so short and they're very fast paced, and you get lots of different ideas kind of thrown at you really rapidly. Grounding in Numbers itself almost feels like one big, you know, composition. Obviously, it's not lyrically linked. I mean, they're still separate songs, but the pacing of the album makes it feel like it's all one thing. This is definitely a collection of songs. This is a collection of 9 excellent separate songs that go together to make an album. So let's talk about them. Let's do that. The album opens with Aloft. Lovely opener, really, and you know, right away it sets the tone of the album really well. These are songs, and they're longer songs. They're longer than the songs on a lot of the songs on Trisector and all the songs on Grounding in Numbers. You know, it opens with really nice, you know, ethereal, atmospheric guitar, which is, you know, quintessential Hamill stuff. Great lyrics, very moody, but that's what we expect with Van der Graaf. And we get the great line. Well, the big one's Hot Air, but there's basically divided into 3 sections. We get the nice guitar section. You know, it's quite a dramatic change of pace, and we get the kind of keyboard-led section, which, you know, sonically it's not necessarily heavy, but there's a great urgency to it, and it gradually builds to the great line that I'm talking about, where he says "Hot Air," and we get the big guitar riff, the heavy guitar riff. And each of these 3 sections are very, very stylistically different and very reminiscent of the earlier stuff. And then the guitar riff is fantastic. There's lots of changes and embellishments and whatnot. They mentioned, I think, that when they made this album, they wrote all the songs, and then before recording them would, you know, rehearse them and play them together, and so they were able to arrange a lot of, you know, neat little embellishments in there. And I think Aloft has got a lot of really good embellishments, like in the keyboard driven part where we get the dun 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 dun. If you've heard it, you might know what I'm talking about, hopefully. So Aloft is very good, multi-sectioned piece, and very Van der Graaf, distinctly Van der Graaf. And then we go into track 2, Alfa Berlina. This is definitely one of the nostalgic songs. Alfa Berlina, of course, is the name of the car that they were driven around Italy back in the Pawn Hearts days, when they you know, first broke out, and they tasted success and freedom, and, you know, obviously living in the time 1972, and it would have been an amazing experience. And obviously that's a shared experience by the 3 of them, and I think it's very appropriate that they put that song on this album, which, you know, like they said, it might be their last, so it's great to have a song on there like that. Stylistically, it's quite unique, and so we get lots of avant-garde sounds. The opening, we would get the sounds of traffic and whatnot, and I think there's the sound of a crowd. Very kind of musique concrète stuff. Concrete, I don't know how to say that word. I've heard it said many different ways. Musique concrete. Found sounds. And some, you know, cool choral Hamill vocals, which it winds its way into the song, which is a very strong verse and a great chorus with the Alfa Berlina bit. Great impassioned vocals by Hamill. The one line, recklessly alive, the way he delivers that line is just fantastic. Then we get another kind of spacey, atmospheric bit, which, I mean, the first time I heard it almost sounded improvised and kind of crazy, but I think there is an underlying structure because of the way the vocal line sits on top of it and the way it winds its way back into the song, the written song kind of bit. I think my point is I think it's all written, but there's the spacey bits and the kind of chorus bits. I think that's the atmospheric spacey stuff. The musique concrète almost reminds me of sections of Lighthouse Keepers and whatnot. So again, like there's a summing up. All these Van der Graaf elements are put into play on this, and it works to great effect because it still sounds fresh. It still sounds it doesn't sound retro at all. I mean, it's still, it's informed by the past, but it's not necessarily looking to the past. And Aloft also, the first song, we were introduced to the accordion. That's worth mentioning. We get more though, particularly on track 3, which is Room 1210. This is the song that first stood out to me. I think this is one of the classics on the album. I think this is going to be one of the really good ones. Although Alfa Berlina is growing on me. The more I hear it, the more I think, oh my goodness, that's a great piece. They're all great pieces, obviously. But Room 1210 is fantastic. It's got that quintessential Peter Hamill piano sound to it, and first time I heard it was just shivers down the spine. It's about the aloneness of being in the hotel room and safe from the madness of the crowds and the escapades of road life, and your hotel room is that little sanctuary. It's kind of describing that. It's got that rapid fire change, as well. We were introduced with the nice Hamill at the piano bit, and then we get Hugh Banton with that comes out of nowhere almost, but it's all arranged into the song, and that keyboard bit reminds me of the classic trio stuff, like a lot of the stuff on Grounding in Numbers or maybe Interference Patterns. And then when Hamill's big piano chords come in over that crazy section it's so good, and Hamill's vocals come in, and it's a quintessential Van der Graaf moment, and then we reach the climax, and it goes into just the classic brutal madness section. That's a wonderful bit. That's the first bit of the album that really stood out to me. And it rocks on for a little bit. Winds its way back into the song, and the song goes from really dark to the kind of not happy, but nostalgic bit, that main theme, and it varies between those two kind of feelings, I guess, vibes. And we get a lot of great accordion on Room 1210 as well, and the song kind of fades out slowly. Doesn't fade out, we still get the final words, and it's got the title of the album is found in Room 1210. That's a nice little touch too. Do not disturb him anymore. So yeah, first standout classic of the album for me. Then we get track 4, which is Forever Falling. This is the first song I actually heard on the album. I heard it in the background of there was a podcast or something in England. There was an interview, and they threw Forever Falling onto that. I really like it. I think it's this one is, it's almost like that 3-chord wonder kind of thing. That for example, on Trisector you get Drop Dead, Grounding in Numbers you get Embarrassing Kid, and Highly Strung, like that kind of the riffy 3-piece punky kind of a song. Of course, it's traced back even further to the Vital era with Door and Ship of Fools and that. So I feel Forever Falling is kind of the DNA of those songs, and that style runs through it. But this is quite a long arranged song. We get the 3-chord wonder kind of stuff with a lot of tricky arrangements in that, and then it goes into this really great funky section in the middle. I love the funky section. That's great. And the funky bit kind of reminds me of the Smoke 5533 bit of Grounding in Numbers. which is fresh. I mean, that's kind of informed by the new Van der Graaf, the trio Van der Graaf, and what it had done before. Um, and yeah, it's a great song. That could be a great single. I think that would be, good to release as a single. Forever Falling, good one. Not the best on the album, but really good. It's an arranged, expanded, more than 3-chord wonder. Then we get to track 5, and we get some bit of breathing space. Forever Falling, it lightens the mood a little bit, and then track 5, Shikata Ga Nai, I think that's how you pronounce it. Shikata Ga Nai. That's the first little bit of breather space, and it's interesting because it's unlike anything Van der Graaf had ever done before, and yet it still sounds so Van der Graaf. I mean, I can't really place any song that's like Shikata Ga Nai. It's an instrumental, I should say, just a couple of minutes. I believe it was written by Hugh Banton, and it is essentially an accordion solo with Guy Evans doing some creepy drums, and I think Hamill's kind of playing around on some keyboards. It almost sounds like the soundtrack to an old Italian horror movie or something. And it's a sieg, really. It kind of divides the album from the opening half to the closing half, and it works really well. And like I said, it's unlike anything they'd ever done, but it sounds so integral to the album, and it's a part of the album, and it's good. Then we get to track 6. This is the controversial one of the album. Oh no, I must have said yes. Oh yes. This song really stood out to me as well, actually, and I really love it because it shows the band is still totally willing to challenge their audience. Right from the get-go, it's just it's so constant, and it's so relentless. As I say, so much Van der Graaf is generated. It's just the heavy, punky, aggressive stuff, and it's still brilliantly arranged. There's lots of tiny little stop-start bits, and bits where we count this many, and then we drop one note, and then we add a note here, and there's a lot of that kind of complex little stuff going on. And I mean, if they do this live, it's going to be absolutely killer. It's one of those cliffhanger songs where everything could fall apart at any minute, and the hair stands on the back of your neck because you're just watching the spectacle unfold. And that'll be interesting because Hugh Banton just plays the bass on that song. It's just there's no organ. I don't believe. I didn't notice any organ. And Hamill's vocals are just absolutely killer on it. And of course, the controversial bit is the jazz section in the middle, which, obviously they're not the Dave Brubeck Quartet or anything. They're not seasoned jazz players, but I think it's just so adventurous. And that jazz section goes on for an awfully long time. I think the first time I heard it, I thought, well, that could have been cut down. But then I think Mergley's 3 is a song that could have been cut down, and yet when I saw Van der Graaf in 2012, that was one of the highlights of the whole show. So, yeah, oh no, I must have said yes. I mean, it kind of reminds me of world record in that regard, and that it is, it's band oriented. It's the band playing, and they get a nice little section that they get to stretch out and kind of jam around on. Guy Evans is playing around with his electronic pad, or his pads, I should say. He's generating some great sounds, and there's a lot of that on Oh No, I Must Have Said Yes. And the jazz section eventually goes back into the relentless back to that section, and it closes. And like I said, it's 7 minutes long. Like I said, I mean, it probably could have been shorter, but I mean, that's the spirit of Van der Graaf. It's no compromises. There's no compromise. That is the song. That's how long we played. That's how long everything. That's how long the Van der Graaf was generated. That's the song. Not sure if it's a classic, but I really do love this song. It's great. Track 7, I think, is probably the runaway classic of the album. This is, I almost have, I got no words for it. Brought to Book is track 7, and it is absolutely stunning. We get the Peter Hamill piano, that signature piano style at the beginning. I don't even know how to describe it. It's a wonderful track. It is absolutely great. It definitely informed by the past. I mean, I feel it's very much school of Pawn Hearts, school of H to HE. There's a lot of really fast changes in it that kind of remind me of Lost. Stylistically, the song doesn't sound anything like Lost, but that rapid fire change, or even after the flood, there's a lot of those fast changes in that. And the changes are just so drastic, and I mean the mood has changed as well. I mean the piano bit in the first half of the song is very dramatic, um, and then when the first crazy keyboard line comes in, I mean it just goes in a totally different direction. But the lyrics hold it all together, and it winds its way back to that intro after a brilliant madness section, which goes on for a nice, healthy, good long amount of time. And it is an absolutely brilliant piece. It's about 8 minutes long, so I mean, you could put that up to, you could totally put brought to book up to anything that's on any of their albums. I think it's fantastic. As I said, I don't know what to say, and I just kind of blabbered on about it, but it's really, really good. I think the album could well be worth price of admission for that. But like I said, all the songs are really good, so check it out. Track 8 is Almost the Words. This is a good song. Again, I can hear some of that the Peter Hamill influence. It's almost like one of his kind of Zen hymn type pieces. Very dark, very moody. Lyrically, it's we're talking about. I think he's talking about the process of figuring out the words for a song, perhaps. But again, his lyrics are like Swiss cheese. There's so many different holes and there's so many different ways to interpret them, right? Depending on what hole you look through. So it's a good one. There's a few lyrics in there that are kind of picked out from Incoherence from 2004, Peter Hamill solo record. Brilliant record, Incoherence. So there is that kind of lyrical linkage to it. And drastic changes to it as well. Like I said, the first few minutes are very kind of in that quiet tone and quiet, moody, Zen kind of a tone. And then we get dramatic keyboard bit, again akin to Interference Patterns or some of the other classic trio stuff. And kind of the choir Hamill vocals come in, and again such a drastic change of pace from the first bit of the song. And when the drama reaches its absolute peak with all the keyboards and the choir Hamill vocals, we just suddenly rocks out and it turns into a crazy rocker. We get the Hamill on guitar, and they just kick out the jams for a bit. It's wonderful. It's fantastic. I think Almost the Words, of all the songs on the album, it might be the one that it's taken me the longest to really get into. But I can tell that it's really, really good. But that dramatic change from the keyboard bit right into the rocky bit, that's where it might get challenging for him to figure this out, how to play this kind of stuff live. Because at one point I'm quite certain Hamill's on the piano, and then like I said, it's an instant changeover. And there's a lot of stuff like that with the accordion and and Banton playing the organ. There's a lot of points in the album where it's like, oh, how is that gonna pull off? So I think the accordion is actually quite integral to a lot of the pieces on this. So yeah, Almost the Words rocks out for a few minutes, and we get some of the studio chatter after the big ending, and then we get the final track on the album, track 9, Go. This is the other one that really, really hit me. It continues to hit me, and I like it so much. It's one of those things where I don't want to overplay it. I don't want to oversaturate myself with it, because it's profound, really. It's not a typical Van der Graaf song. It's not really a band piece. It's very subdued. It's very it's in the vein of a ballad, and it's about moving on. There's very few lyrics in it. There's a very short run of words, but they're very profound. And if indeed this is their final album, and obviously I'm a fan. I'd be delighted if they make another album. We as fans, we want more. But if this is indeed the last one, it is a beautiful thing to end on. I think it's it feels like it feels like the goodbye almost. Um, but it's not sad. You know, it's not. Go isn't a sad track. Remember, I read reviews before I got a chance to hear it, and they're saying, "Oh, it ends on a very somber, melancholy note." And you know, I guess it is somber, but it's hopeful too. There's a really great sense of hope to it. And compared to some of Hamill's recent solo albums, like Consequences or Thin Air, the last songs on those albums are dark, dark, dark. And you know, I mean, Go, yeah, I mean, sure, there's a melancholy to it, but there's a peace. There's a peace to it. It sounds, there's a, you know, if it is the band talking about themselves, there's a sense of peace with the past, and you know, being able to move on in good spirit. And as the lyrics indicate, all for the best. It is a profound little piece. I really like Go. I like the fact that Guy Evans he may trigger a couple of sounds on his pads there, but if it is the final album, I love how he gets that one little brush stroke on the cymbal. The line, "Here's the thing." Wonderful. And I guess an unusual way for Van der Graaf to end the album. I mean, the last two albums, the two trio albums, both ended with bangs, big crazy bits of madness. But yeah, this one ends with a piece of profound beauty. And yeah, there it is. I've talked about it. You know, like I said, this is still a very fresh opinion. Where, like I said, it'll take a while before it soaks into all of our heads. But I think this is a wonderful album. It's probably, you know, all in all, probably a better Van der Graaf Generator album than a Grounding in Numbers. But I still think there's something very definitive about Grounding in Numbers. I still think that's a definitive trio album. This is just like a definitive. You know, it can't be definitive because it doesn't have Jackson on it, but it is a summing up. It is a, you know, it acknowledges the past and it looks forward at the same time. And yeah, it's a wonderful piece. So we as fans rejoice. We've got brand new music by a fantastic, fantastic band. Peter Hamill, Guy Evans, and Hugh Banton. The trio, the current trio that is Van der Graaf Generator. So yeah, that's there's not much more I can do with the Van der Graaf stuff. And it might take me a while because I'm doing a few things. I'm going to do some Jethro Tull videos. I've got Gentle Giant on the go. I've got Genesis, which I've almost finished. But I am going to talk about Peter Hamill's solo albums eventually. So you know, like I said, it may not be for some time, but stay tuned, and I will begin discussing the Hamill solo stuff, if that's all right, if that's what you guys want. I want to because I love it so much, and I need an outlet to chat about it. So thank you very much for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed my chat. Send me a like and a subscribe, and we will see you later with something or another new. Alright, we'll see you then, eh? Cheers.